Hi, welcome to my complete Jiaoqiu guide. Jiaoqiu is the newest 5-star coming in the second phase of version 2.4 in Honkai style. He looks like a pretty good unit with a special deity similar to Black Swan's Arcana, while also being an upgrade for Acheron teams. In this video, I'll be going through everything you need to know on how to build and play Jiaoqiu, covering his best light cards, relic sets, planar ornaments, teams, and many more. Before we start, I'll be giving away a supply pass / welcome in / crystal card to my subscribers at 6k subs, so make sure you subscribe to enter. Starting off, what does Jiaoqiu actually do? Jiaoqiu is a 5-star fire unit following the path of nihility. Jiaoqiu's talent, Quartet Finesism Octave Finery, makes all attacks apply a stack of Ashen Roast, with each stack increasing damage taken by the applied target. Ashen Roast is a special type of deity similar to Black Swan's Arcana, but this time for burn instead of wind shear, and it has a max stack of 5. Jiaoqiu's skill, Scorch Onslaught, deals blast damage and applies 1 stack of Ashen Roast on the primary target. Jiaoqiu's ultimate, Pyrograph Arcanum, deals damage to all enemies and set the stacks to the highest in the battle while activating a field lasting for 3 turns. This field makes all enemies take more ultimate damage while also applying a stack of Ashen Roast whenever an enemy takes action. And Jiaoqiu's technique, Fiery Queller, basically applies 1 stack of Ashen Roast to all enemies. For Jiaoqiu's bonus trace abilities, first we have Seared Scent, which makes it so when the ultimate zone exists, enemies entering the combat will be afflicted with Ashen Roast depending on the highest stack currently in the battle. Second, we have Hearth Kindle, which increases attack depending on the effect hit rate. And lastly, Pyre Cleanse, which generates energy upon battle start. Overall, Jiaoqiu has a pretty straightforward kit. While it's not the most simple, thanks to Black Swan, this doesn't even come close to the complexity of that character. And speaking of Black Swan, these two have a very similar playstyle. Both are deity appliers and are kind of our sub DPS / support depending on what team they are played in. As for his trace priorities, you want to be focusing on his talent, then his ultimate, then skill / basic. Moving on to Jiaoqiu's best light cards. As expected, his best in slot will be his signature light card, Those Many Springs, which boasts a huge effect hit rate increase and basically applies another debuff that increases damage taken by the enemy. Obviously, this is perfect for him, as not only does the effect hit rate help with his major trace, but it also has another debuff that makes him all the more powerful as a sub DPS / support. However, a 4-star that is also very strong for him is S5 before the tutorial. This light card also helps with the effect hit rate breakpoint, but also has energy, which enables a higher uptime and a more consistent ultimate field, which is perfect for him. But S5 resolution is not a bad option too if you're planning to play him in a more supportive role. Otherwise, S5 Eyes of the Prey and S5 is Showtime for free to play will be decent options too, and for pure friction, Solitary Healing will be a great alternative as well. Now for Jiaoqiu's best relic sets and planar ornaments. For his best in slot relic set, it is actually a combination of 2-piece Pioneer and Hacker Space. The reason is that ideally you want to max out this major trace. And if you succeed in doing that, he gets a lot of attack, meaning damage percentages are usually better in most cases. So going 2-piece Pioneer is the idea here, and 2-piece Hacker Space for the speed, as more speed means more turns, which means more energy for a high uptime on the ultimate field and high uptime on the debuffs. But of course, depending on substats, going for 4-piece Pioneer is not that bad either, and even 4-piece Prisoner / Musketeer is a pretty good idea too if they have good substats. Realistically, with his extremely high expectations of effect hit rate, going by substats on 2-piece of any one of these sets will actually be his best in slot. As for his best planar ornaments, his best in slot will be Pan Cosmic on DOT teams and Vonvac / Penacony on all other teams. Pretty obviously, in DOT teams, especially ones with Kafka, Jiaoqiu will have more priority on dealing damage himself, so going for a more selfish planar ornament like Pan Cosmic will be the best option. And for other teams where he is more or less a support, being less selfish and going for an energy regen set will benefit his teams a lot more, especially in Acheron teams. But that being said, Kalpagni is not a bad option too for pure friction, as Break Effect is not that bad of a stat, especially in pure friction, as I will explain next. Next up is Jiaoqiu's best relics and planar stats. For the main stats, we are looking at an EHR body, speed boots, fireballs, and attack rope. Generally, this will be the best main stats for Jiaoqiu. For body, effect hit rate is almost required as he needs a lot of it for both his major traits and just to guarantee that his debuffs gets applied. For boots, speed is generally more recommended as he really gets a lot of attack, so having more turns usually turns out to be better. For balls, fire damage bonus will be the best option. As I mentioned before, he already gets a lot of attack. So more attack will technically be diminishing returns compared to all other stats. And for rope, attack is usually what I recommend. However, for content like Pure Friction, if you are overkilling the enemies, ERR rope will be good too. And for Akron teams, if you want to prioritize getting debuffs for her ults more than personal damage, then ERR rope is okay too. As for substats, you want to be focusing on getting EHR to at least 140% and 180% if possible. 140 is required for the major traits, and 180, or technically 177, is the guarantee Ashen Rose gets applied in MOC. Without a light cone that boosts EHR, getting 180% is very hard, so reaching 140 to max out the major traits is usually good enough. However, with or without the light cone's help, if you can get 180, then by all means go for it. Speed is also important as going for 160 is ideal since it really helps with the ultimate zone uptime and debuff uptime. But sticking to around 134 for Kafka team is not too bad of an idea too if it means you can get to 180% EHR. And other than that, attack will be the next best option as all other stats are more or less useless on him. But before I move on, I do want to mention break effect. Despite Jiaoqiu not skinning off break effect per se, in Pure Fiction, the enemies are usually really easy to break. So in content where there are a lot of weaker enemies, going for break effect is actually a decent option over attack, especially if you're running him in a Kafka team where Kafka can actually trigger his break DOT as well. Moving on to Jiaoqiu's best Eidolons, E1 is an insane buff to his supportive capabilities with a massive 40% increase in damage against enemies with Ashen Rose, while also increasing his talent Ashen Rose application. E2 is also insane, but this time it's a buff to his DOT damage, making him more or less comparable to Black Swan in some cases. E3 and 5 are just trace levels. E4 is more of a quality of life buff, but it could be important especially in a no sustain team, and E6 basically makes him an insane DOT unit with Ashen Rose transfer, limit increase to 9, and an all type resist down on each stack. Overall, Jiaoqiu has some insanely strong Eidolons, almost makes me question why these are not part of his base kit. Anyways, for his key Eidolons, going for E1 is a good option for most people, and E2 for people looking to use him for DOT mainly. And of course, E6. But that is a territory I won't touch on. But he is still a decent character at E0, so don't worry too much about his Eidolons. Now for the age-old question of E1 versus S1. I will have to go with S1 for this time, as the EHR on the light cone is far more important than any damage buff, as he can't do damage if he can't apply his debuff. But that being said, if he can reach a comfortable EHR without light cone, then E1 becomes significantly stronger. Finally, we get to Jiaoqiu's best teammates and teams. To begin, I want to first label the two primary playstyles of Jiaoqiu. First is a debuffer support, and the second is a DOT sub DPS. For support, he'll be best played with, as you probably heard a million times before, Akron. The reason is pretty simple. Jiaoqiu increases damage and ultimate damage against Ashen Roasted enemies while also applying debuffs really fast, which is all perfect for Akron. And for sub DPS, he'll be best played with Kafka. Pretty obviously, since we have yet to get another DOT enabler, Kafka is still the backbone of all DOT teams, and Jiaoqiu is no different. Despite his capabilities of a DOT DPS is locked behind Eidolons unfortunately, however nevertheless, he's still a great unit to pair with Kafka. So with all that being said, for support Jiaoqiu, his best team would be something like this, with Akron, Sparkle, and Aventurine. Of course, you can switch out Sparkle for Pella and Aventurine for Fushuan if you don't have the characters. And for DOT Jiaoqiu, using him with Kafka, Black Swan, and Huohuo would be the ideal team. However, that being said, if you don't have Black Swan, going for Runmei is not a bad option too, and of course, Huohuo isn't the only sustain options for this team. However, since Jiaoqiu just has a really good kit of debuffs, using him as a generic debuffer is not a bad option too, so something like this or this could work as well. So yeah, that does it for the Jiaoqiu guide. Overall, he is a decent character that is quite flexible in terms of what his role is and the team options. However, the sad part is that he is only a slight upgrade or a side grade for most teams, which is unfortunate. But thinking about it more logically, if every new character Hoi releases is the next best character, then the power creep and the free to play ability of this game will be really bad, so I am actually not too bothered by his power level.